Welcome, vinyl community, to my high school reunion from 1960. I'm going to show my 45 RPM collection from my high school years, which I still have. I bought all of these records new between 1956 and 1960. I bought a lot more than what I still have, but it's amazing that I still have these. In my introductory video, I showed two LPs, including Elvis's second record, that I still have. I had a lot of LPs, and I suspect what happened with those is that when my sister kind of inherited this later on, the LPs probably went where the 45s by the early 70s weren't as popular as they were earlier, and so they were probably all just left in a box at my parents' house, and that's how I was lucky enough to get them. I didn't count these. There's maybe a little fewer than 50. I'm going to hold up a couple little piles here. I'm going to show some of the records, tell a few little stories that may be of interest, and for the most part, I'll whip through them pretty quick. So here's the first little pile that I'm going to talk about. And in the last few days, these mostly didn't have sleeves. They were dirty. I run them all through the spin clean the last few days. I bought some of these nice clean white sleeves to put them in. And they've had a lot of wear, so forth. They're not in great condition, but out of this whole pile, there's only two of them that are cracked or chipped. Here is just one artist, which I'll talk about, and I got more than this. Some of these are included in that pile I just showed you. This happens to be Little Richard, who was my favorite artist at that time. These are all Elvis records, 45s and EPs, and I had those. I had several of his on LP, so I maybe didn't have quite as few 45s. Here's kind of a miscellaneous group. I'll go through those fairly quick just to give you a little idea. So the first one I want to show you is Only the Lonely, Roy Orbison on Monument. This record, surprisingly, is in very good condition. About the time this record come out, my high school sweetheart had dumped me. So, man, was I hooked to the tune Roy Orbison, Only the Lonely. And probably the reason this didn't get played more, because they played it on the radio about once every hour, so I maybe didn't have to play the record so much. But that's kind of my first high school memory there. Nice to have the original Roy Orbison 45, and it's in pretty good shape. Now I'm going to show this little group and talk about them. And this group, I mentioned this in my introductory video. You see right here is medical bandage tape. Okay, and I told the story there. The reason we got the didn't have other kinds of labels back then in the 1950s. We would go to dances, go to people's house, go to a sock hop at school or something. We would take music we wanted played. We put our names on our records, so at the end of the evening we could dig ours out of the pile and get them home. I probably had more than this with my name on them, and I just pulled these out as a little group. Of course, some of these are going to be some of my favorites, including the Little Richard pile. She's Got It, Little Richard. Flip Side, Heebie Jeebies. Here's a good one that some of you may not be too familiar with. Jim Dandy, Laverne Baker. This is probably one of the earlier records I got, maybe 1956 or something. Laverne Baker was really good, and she was kind of there at the beginning of rock and roll, and I really liked hers. Fats Domino. Blue Monday, what's the reason I'm not pleasing you? I like fast dancing, so of course I got a lot of the fast Little Richard. Lucille, flip side, send me some lovin'. You could slow dance to that one. My second favorite artist during this time period was probably Bill Haley and the Comets, although I don't seem to have as many of his records surviving. Rip It Up. Teenager's Mother. Another Bill Haley. R.O.C.K. The Saints Rock and Roll. I know a lot of these, I'm not holding them up long enough for you to see the label, but you've seen the labels before. Another Bill Haley. Choo Choo Chaboogie. Flip Side, Don't Knock the Rock. Good advice then, good advice now. Another Fats Domino on the original Imperials, I'm in Love Again. And My Blue Heaven, which of course was an old tune from the 1920s that Fats Domino had a big hit on. Now you saw in that pile there were some Little Richards. This whole pile's all Little Richard. I'm going to have 3 or 4 here that I bought about 20 years ago. Otherwise, all of these records I bought between 1956 and 1960, and I'm going to whiz through these. Good Golly, Miss Molly. Hey, 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 the girl can't help it. All around the world. True Fine Mama, I love that one. Oh, my soul. Miss Ann. Jenny, Jenny, Jenny. Shake a Hand. And All Night Long. These last little groups are probably one I bought at around 20 years ago. It just happened by accident to stop into a place in an antique district where they were selling old records. I said, do you have any Little Richard? And they had quite a few. So Bama, Bama, Bama Lou. Annie Is Back. These are ones I bought at that place. Can't Believe You Want to Leave. Keep a Knockin'. That would have been one of my original ones. And the one that I started out asking about in the store, Babyface. Again, a 1920s tune. And I probably maybe had this on LP or something, but I never had the 45. So I went in there, Flip Side, I'll Never Let You Go. I really like that tune. Same thing here. This has somebody else's name on it. Lonesome and Blue. Kansas City on the other side. Now this one is unusual. I bought this one at the store. This has to be a later record. I'll hold it up here. I've never seen this label before. In the middle of the night, without my magnifying glass, can't tell you what label this is. And Where Will I Find a Place to Sleep This Evening? These may have been either much later ones or ones before he got famous, and I think this is probably one of his first ones. Again, I bought this in later years on the OK label, Hurry Sundown, and I don't want to discuss it. Yeah, can use that phrase today. These are Elvis here. Here's an EP, As Long As I Have You, Lover Doll, stuff on the other side. Don't Be Cruel, Hound Dog, Jailhouse Rock, Treat Me Nice, Just Want to Be Your Teddy Bear, Loving You. It's interesting that I didn't have, probably did at the time, but in What's Left Over, I didn't have any Elvis with the medical bandage tape on him showing I took him to dances. Hard-Headed Woman, and Don't Ask Me Why. And I particularly like to dance to Little Richard, though. So, okay, gonna go through these pretty quick. Decca, Bill Haley and the Comets, Rock the Joint. Ricky Nelson, Have I Told You Lately That I Love You? Another old tune. Bebop Baby, of course, when I was in high school, so when Ricky Nelson was singing in his TV show. I never missed that. Another Imperial, Blueberry Hill, Fats Domino, big hit. Honey Child. Patsy Cline on Decca, Love Letters in the Sand, and That's How a Heartache Begins. And I know back during that time I had a Patsy Cline LP. Another one of my favorites, which I probably had on LP, Brenda Lee, That's All You Gotta Do. And I'm Sorry. Huge hit. Jerry Lee Lewis, Whole Lot of Shaking Going On. It'll Be Me. Here's one I was kind of surprised was in the pile. Don't know why having a trouble seeing this, but it's Billy Vaughn, and he had a hit with Raunchy. And on the other side, Sail Along Silvery Moon, typical Billy Vaughn type tune, but Raunchy was a tune that was a hit for him with the kids. Here's another good one on roulette, Buddy Knox. And the tunes are That's Why I Cry and Teasable Pleasable You. I saw Buddy Knox live in a small venue in my hometown, and this was before they started doing concerts. These people performed at dances, and so I actually got to meet him, was there in the little office room after the dance was over, where his manager was counting out the money and so forth. So quite an experience for a young guy. Buddy Knox again, Come On Baby. Somebody Touched Me, and the thing about somebody like this, a reasonable guitar player, they could do a lot of little places like where I lived, and it didn't have to be a big facility, and they didn't have to bring a band with them, so they could hit a lot of one-night gigs and make a little bit of money. Chess, Chuck Berry, Rock and Roll Music, Blue Feeling, Chess, Chuck Berry, Carol, Hey Pedro, Chess, Chuck Berry, School Days. This one got a lot of wear on it. It must have got a lot of play. Deep Feeling, Connie Francis, Tommy, Be Anything. Another Fats Domino on the original Imperial. When I See You, What Will I Tell My Heart? Those are probably not hit tunes there. Connie Francis, Stupid Cupid. Yeah, we listened to all kinds of music in the rock and roll era. Carolina Moon, always liked Connie Francis. Eddie Cochran, Liberty, Summertime Blues. Flipside, Love Again. Marty Robbins, The Story of My Life, and Once a Week Date. Marty Robbins had a few big hits. One of his was a white sport coat and a pink carnation. Back during that time, I played tenor saxophone in junior high and high school, and that was one of the tunes I wanted to learn to play on my saxophone. Of course, he's a country guy, but country people had crossover hits back then. And Ronnie Self, somebody you don't ever hear about today, probably Bopalina. And I Ain't Going Nowhere. I don't know that he was a one-hit wonder. I don't remember. But that's the 45 RPM records that I still have in 2017. And I purchased these records between 1956 and 1960. Got to be some kind of miracle that they still hear, and except for two of them, they're all playable. So I've got other 45s, but not from this era, not this kind of stuff. It'd be more old-time jazz and other kinds of stuff. So Hope you enjoyed this little update and participating in my 1960 high school reunion. So, see ya.